hippie upstarts doing homebrew chemistry, legal horizons, new analogs, and designer drugs, notes on treatments, and times for question at the end. And because I didn't want multiple slides of the absurd variety of retail packaging, there's a bonus image that I have on here that really lets you know who the retail target audience is. So here you can see the 2D skeletons of both 7-hydroxymitragynine and mitragynine pseudoindoxyl. They're structural isomers of one another, and not all mitragynine isomers are created equal, though. And 7-O and pseudoindoxyl are some of the most potent ones, as are the designer drugs made from those as starting points. So 7-hydroxymitragynine, also known as methoxychorinanthiodine, 7-OHMG, 7-OHMIT, 7-OHM, 7-OH, and as I'll be referring to it for the rest of this presentation to save my tongue, 7-O. 7-O is a highly potent mixed receptor agonist and antagonist at the mu opioid receptors. It's naturally present in kratom in small amounts and was first identified as such in 1994 by Japanese researchers. So much like buprenorphine, it can be thought of as a partial agonist. For the delta and kappa opioid receptors, it appears to be a competitive antagonist. One of the notable features of 7-O, outside of the addiction potential and the unique withdrawal effects that I'll speak about later on, is 7-O has what's known as biased agonism, in which it does not have a pronounced effect on respiratory depression. It does not activate the beta-arrestin pathway, which is a feature that traditional opiates have, which contribute to their medically dangerous effects. And in fact, I was hard-pressed to find any overdose deaths that were attributed to 7-O or any of the related compounds. And now we're on to binding affinities, and this is where it gets kind of surprising. 7-O is far more potent than normal mitragynine, the main alkaloid in kratom, and it's approximately 46 times as potent as that. And it's anywhere from 13 to 20 times greater than that of morphine. Now, a high binding affinity does not necessarily mean that a substance is stronger than something else, as there's some bio and neurochemistry involved there. But in general, it's a decent measure of thumb. There are drugs with high affinities and high potencies, but low intrinsic efficacy, such as buprenorphine, where buprenorphine is much more potent than morphine, but does not necessarily have the same intrinsic efficacy for pain relief and the associated side effects. Then there are drugs that have low potency but high efficacy, like meperidine or Demerol. I will also be talking about mitragynine pseudoindoxyl in this presentation and some of the related drugs that have been designed from them as a starting point. In most vape shops, you can either find pseudoindoxyl as a single entity product or in combination with 7-O in a binary formulation. Online, you can find all that you could wish for in both of these and more, in a variety of literal flavors, and more which I will touch on towards the end of this presentation. And while I was doing research for this, I even found some documentation of scrappy young upstarts oxidizing mitragynine in their kitchens using commonly available reagents that I don't want to walk you all through, as this will be publicly available. But anyone with even an elementary understanding of chemistry could do this in their home. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. For the rest of this presentation, to save my tongue, I will also be referring to pseudoindoxyl as just pseudo. And Pseudo is an alkaloid related to both mitragynine and 7-O. It is a rearrangement of 7-O, and it can be found as both the single entity and in the binary formulation. And the pseudoindoxyl species is the more potent of the two. Now, as this is all cutting edge research right now, and I having limited access to a lot of these scholarly articles out there, trying to get specific binding info for this was locked behind a lot of paywalls. Something I did learn, though, is that through an odd quirk of human biology, 7-O is his turned into pseudo in human blood in human blood plasma because it's not stable. Now, if that does turn out to be true, 7-O could be thought of as a prodrug for pseudo. And unlike 7-O, which is only a partial agonist at the mu opioid receptor, pseudo is a full agonist at both the mu and the delta receptors. Now, the following won't mean much to a lot of you and barely means anything for me beyond the factoid that I'm about to tell you, but it is a G protein biased agonist at the mu receptor, which may be responsible for the favorable side effect profile compared to the traditional opioids. That has something to do with the beta arrestin pathway that I spoke on earlier. And my biochemistry knowledge isn't up to the same level as my pharmacology knowledge, so I can't speak as to the mechanisms that are behind that, only to say that it's one saving grace for both of these drugs is that they do not cause respiratory depression like the conventional opioids do. And once again, I was hard pressed to find any kind of overdose data, but given that this is all new, we may have new data next year. And in this slide, through a quirk of human biology, you can see that on this graph in the lower right, this is a graph that shows how in human blood, 7-O is converted into pseudoindoxyl. And for humans, it has the highest rate. For every other mammal, it's not the same, so we lucked out. As stated in the introduction, 7-O is a powerful mu opioid mixed receptor agonist and antagonist. And the mu receptor is the fun recreational receptor. It has mild action on the kappa opioid receptors, which are distinctly not fun receptors. Salvinorin A and butorphanol are both highly potent agonists at the kappa receptor, and both are known for their powerful hallucinatory effects. So there may be some self-limiting features with 7-O. The binding affinity for 7-O is some 22 times higher than that of morphine. And while binding affinity does not correlate to C of the PAT's potency in a one-to-one fashion, there is a relationship there where, generally speaking, binding affinity does correlate to higher potency opioids. Mitragynine pseudoindoxyl has an even higher binding affinity, and it is also unstable in human blood and will deprotonate into 7-O. And this is one of those things that while I was researching, there is some conflicting information. I don't know if this is a vacillatory reaction where these drugs will readily convert into one another in human blood. There's a lot of this information that is locked behind paywalls that I don't have access to. When someone ingests regular kratom and the mitragynine gets into their system, it will undergo first pass metabolism via the CYP3A4 enzyme and be converted into 7-O, as well as a host of other oxidative alkaloids via an equal host of other enzymatic pathways. There are people who will subjectively report and objectively display physiological symptoms of intoxication far more than others will off of kratom, codeine, tramadol, hydrocodone, oxycodone, and a few other opioids, and or re, require far less of an active dose. These lucky people are super metabolizers. I happen to be a poor metabolizer of all things CYP3A4, and as a result, got what at the time was frustratingly little from several easily attainable opioids. I spent a lot of energy trying to pharmacologically increase the level of 3A4 in my body so that I could either get something out of codeine, tramadol, and to a lesser extent hydrocodone and oxycodone, or to extend their active half-life in my body. It's one of those things that I look back on and feel that I'm just smart enough to get myself into a lot of mischief or trouble, but not to stay out of it. But I digress here. Some of the other metabolic byproducts of ingesting kratom are now being sold as well, and we'll get into those a little bit later. They're of interest to not only unscrupulous gray market vendors, but also to the pharmaceutical industry. I came across a patent that had every possible oxidative iteration and isomer of mitragynine in a patent. There's a few of these that have either gone through clinical trials in the past or are currently in trials. There is a race within the pharmaceutical industry to discover new palliative medicines that lack the traditional medically dangerous effects of the classical opioids. And now we're going to get on to the abuse and addiction concerns. These are some self-reported withdrawal screenshots that I found on Reddit. This person says that in their opinion, they don't count from, I don't know what that is. They started to go through withdrawal from them and it was so bad. Like they were on pain pills for a few years and this somehow felt worse than that. They had to go to powder and then taper down after a week on the powder. Their mindset was to get the 7-0 out of their system and then taper down and jump from the powder, which still sucked, but not nearly as bad. The next person says that they're 6 days clean from a year-long 7-0 addiction. They are taking 4 to 8 tablets a day and sometimes over 200 milligrams in a single day for just over a year. Says, I'm still not feeling right, but it's the mindsets that's changed in me. The will to not give up, willing to suffer and go through this withdrawal cold turkey. It's a very intense time, but I can tell on day 6, I am now seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And if you think you can't do it on your own, it is completely okay to go to a 7 to 10 day detox center or even longer rehab. 7-0 is a different beast. Stay safe. Love and prayers. This next person it really highlights how within everybody, there's going to be a lot of highly individual response to this. So they say that their withdrawal from 7-0 lasted for more than a month, and the worst symptoms came 2 weeks into the withdrawal. This is another self-reported withdrawal experience. This person had been using 7-0 for about 6 months, or for about 4 weeks and 6 months back. They went back on to their oxycodone and hydrocodone meds and then jumped off of those because the withdrawal from 7-0 was so much worse. There's going to be a lot in this section that I don't have hard data for, as the widespread availability is an emergent phenomenon within the past 2 to 3 years. Before that, you had to know someone with specific knowledge of what to do to either isolate the tiny fraction of 7-0 from dried leaf material, or they had to have knowledge to know how to convert mitragynine into 7-0. It was out there, but it was not for retail sale. However, its use has exploded recently. It's the same story with pseudo. And each time I go into a vape shop, I stop and chat with the counter person and I ask them about how much of it they sell. And they all invariably say that they sell so much of it that they almost don't even bother with the regular kratom anymore. They still keep some of it on hand as there's still a demand for it, but they sell so much more 7.0 that they give priority placement to it. There's people that are spending their rent money on it to try and stay high and to avoid the withdrawal symptoms. And the withdrawals anecdotally from people with prior heavy habits of their own, it's known to be, as one person hilariously said, that the experience was not very cash money and that heroin was far easier to kick than 7.0. I've seen it likened on social media to being worse than withdrawal from hydromorphone or from fentanyl and heroin. The length of time that the withdrawals last seems to be wildly variable as well. Some claims of it going on for almost 2 weeks, others say a month or more. The individual body chemistry may play a role in this and the person's mind state as well. It's kind of hard to say. There haven't been any formal studies done on the nature of withdrawal from 7.0 or from pseudo. And one of the potential complications with the withdrawals from 7.0 is that the retail sale of 7.0, you're not getting a pure isolate. You can definitely find that, but in most brick and mortar stores, or the ones that you can just run down the street for, you're going to have a more or less crudely oxidized kratom extract. So all of the assorted alkaloids will be present in the products that you can get there. And those will be oxidized into various other compounds with varying degrees of potency. And this pharmacological cocktail that somebody's taking is going to contribute to their withdrawal effects and could have a large impact on the length of time that they are reporting going through withdrawals. There's some journal articles that came across that were discussing how some of those related compounds in there are even more potent than 7.0, and we'll briefly touch on those in a few slides. The anecdotal reports from users indicate that the withdrawals are just as bad and quite often worse than from traditional opiates like heroin. Many of them self-report having to go on methadone or on buprenorphine to handle the withdrawals. And then even then, it does not handle it like it does for the traditional opioids. Other users also note that they can still feel the effects of 7.0 while on standard doses of buprenorphine, which indicates that there are some distinct pharmacologic actions of the drug which we are not presently aware of. One of the particularly problematic things to note with this is that many people in recovery have been caught up using 7.0 and pseudo. There are a number of people who ignorantly or not started using 7.0 and have been caught up in the cycle of spending $100 a day or more on large bottles of it. There's a somewhat well-known quality of instances of repeat habituation known as this one part, known as kindling. And this is most commonly known to be an effect from the withdrawal of sedative hypnotics and the GABAergic drugs. What this is that when somebody first develops a habituation to a drug and then stops, when they go back on it, it takes less time for them to develop those physical symptoms to it. And the withdrawals from it are worse and worse each time. So there were reports that I saw of people using it for merely a day or two and then stopping and going back into withdrawals that stuck around for a long time. There's a common sentiment that the withdrawals are even more intense and of a longer duration than those of the traditional opioids. And I came across a few posts that were suggesting that people switch back to heroin or to whatever other drug they were using prior to 7.0 and then quit using that because the withdrawals from that is far easier to handle. And here we have another slide that kind of goes over what I talked about previously about there being multiple alkaloids that are present in the commonly available products, and talking a little bit about the withdrawals. This person says that they've never met anyone who was using 7.0 and wasn't taking it all day, every day, and they're that with the regular users, people will wake up multiple times during the night needing to redose just to go back to sleep so that the withdrawals don't kick in. And they also talk about the the kindling effect too. Here is a slide that kind of goes over some of the available retail packaging that you can find. And as you can see, that they know who their target audience is, and a lot of this is highly suspect. It's specifically designed to look like a prescription bottle of your normal oxycodone or hydrocodone or codeine. You can even find vape pens with 7.0 in it. And one of the things that I found yesterday was there is one manufacturer who is making orange flavored strips that you can put on your tongue as though it were Suboxone. On this next slide, this is from one online vendor that I found who is selling the mostly pure isolate. When you're going to the brick and mortar stores, you're not going to find this sort of thing, but you can find it right online. It's pretty common and it's not terribly expensive. And here's one other slide, just shows more of it. The price, it kind of goes over what some of the alkaloids in there. It's kind of crazy out there right now. 7.0 is widely available at every smoke and vape shop that I have set foot in. I've been hard pressed to find one that I haven't seen any of it. And any store that sells Kratom will for sure sell 7.0. It's a huge moneymaker for them. And there's many people spending upwards of $100 a day or more to support their habit. I've seen social media posts talking about how people who have been in recovery picked up a 7.0 habit and then went back on heroin because that was far cheaper to maintain than their 7.0 addiction. And as mentioned earlier, vape shops are a little behind the curve with respect to the cutting edge of novel kratom designer drugs, but you can find them readily online. I have a few slides that show the higher refined products for sale willy-nilly online, and they'll sell to just about anyone with the money. One of the things that I've noticed with a lot of the sketchier or more readily abusable nootropics is that the internet vendors will often require you to have some type of approved account to purchase certain ones. They will either require a research facility address or will require verification of age and some basic knowledge tests to make sure that you're not going to hurt yourself, or to at least cut down on that possibility, which helps to protect them from liability claims. I found one instance of a site that required you to apply to purchase products, and another that merely asked if you were 21 or more, but no verification whatsoever. They're merely working on the honor system here. There's a whole subset of 7.0 users who I found were unknowingly taking it in one product called Feel Free. And Feel Free only advertises that they are a drink mixture of kava, which is harmless enough and kratom, but they don't overtly specify that their product has a significant fraction of 7-O and some of the other oxidized alkaloids. And people were getting hooked on it, not realizing what they were in for. And again, spending upwards of $100 a day or more to support their habit. I found this out running across the Quitting Feel Free subreddit and had no idea what it was about until I started doing a little digging around. Feel Free has a massive social media presence, and they advertise everywhere. There's tons of people taking it, not knowing what they're actually taking. And that company is particularly problematic, has been caught up in a few scandals, and the founder of that company is currently serving a lengthy prison sentence for engaging in some highly unethical business practices. So it just goes to show you what the ethics of that company are. I did a test on one of the sites that I pulled a lot of this information from, and they did not require any sort of verification. Just send the money to them via Zelle, Venmo, or in one case, Chime, and they'll ship it right to your front door. I was a little surprised, but also not, that there was zero attempt to verify age prior to processing payment. There wasn't even a little box to check saying that you understand what the product is and you accept all risks from using it, nor one that says that you understand that it's not for human consumption, which is something that a lot of these gray market vendors will use as a way to sort of skirt laws. For a while, I was getting emails after having gone through the process of trying to place one of these orders to see if that verification popped up later. And I was getting emails asking me to complete that order and send them a payment. And when I replied back that I worked in a drug treatment facility and was doing a test to see if they had any sort of age verification or any kind of limits whatsoever, they stopped emailing me back real quick. And on social media, 7-O's everywhere. You can find it across all major platforms, and all of them have some 7-O content. I'd shown you earlier a few screen grabs from Reddit, which is not all over per se, but there's a ton of content on there if you know where to look on that site. Reddit, to their credit, has a screen that pops up before you can view a lot of it that says that the content ahead has info on drug use and asks if you are over 18 and wish to proceed, and also has some resources for you to call if you're struggling with drug addiction. The others, none whatsoever. However, one of the surprising features that I saw is that a large portion of the content I found on the other sites is very much anti-7-O in nature. I watched any number of TikToks, Reels, Shorts, and I think that short-form content is as bad for you as drugs are, and I have up until now avoided it at all costs, so I hope you appreciate my research here. And they all have warnings against using 7-O or about trying to correct some of the misinformation that you can find online. And that the picture on the right is a screen grab that I took from a YouTube video that I was watching. And you can see that it's from the 7 Hope Alliance, which is not a non-biased source, but they claim that 7-O has no withdrawal and is less addictive, and that's completely untrue. And now we're on to kitchen chemistry. I did have a screen grab on here from Reddit that I took off because I didn't want that information being out there. I've removed it, but I'll be talking a little bit about it. But I took it off because it's a bit of a cognito hazard. This will be posted on YouTube, and while ROSC doesn't necessarily have viral videos, I still don't want that information out there willy-nilly. The basic description that follows will do nothing to refine the procedure here, and I've gone out of my way to make it as vague as possible. while researching 7.0 and the history behind it of entering the drug using consciousness, I came across a scrappy upstart on Reddit who figured out a way to oxidize powdered kratom, drastically increasing the amount of 7.0. Prior to the past couple years, you had to be deep into drug nerd territory to have access or the know-how to acquire 7.0 through the practical application of some chemistry skill. Now, the comment section on this thread was full of discussion about what reagents he could use instead to drastically increase the efficiency of the reaction and the 7.0 percentage. And people were trying this at home and then reporting it after trying it, talking about how much better it was than regular kratom and how it felt like they had taken a dose of oral hydromorphone. Now, were 7.0 to be scheduled, we'll definitely see a downturn in use, but not a total absence of it. And this is one reason why. This procedure was fairly easy to follow, and is one that anyone at home could do with some easily attainable reagents, but there's still a fairly high entry barrier and fairly high barrier to access that knowledge. The photograph on the bottom is a little bonus that I threw in. Within the right circles, people are getting pretty advanced with their manufacture of 7.0, and that's a photo of someone's gas column chromatography setup. And in my past life, this is the kind of thing that I would be all about. I get to use a lot of the knowledge from my drug using time still, only now it's for good, but I don't get to do much chemistry these days. And if I could figure out a way to work a little bit of chemistry into my day job too, I would be a happy man. Now we're going to talk about some of the novel analogs and designer drugs. I was able to find several sites selling these newer designer drugs that are derived from 7.0 and from a few other kratom alkaloids by following some vague clues on Reddit, which Reddit overwhelmingly does not allow the discussion of vendors, but once in a while users will drop cryptic hints about where to look, and I was able to find it for sale. These sites were selling MGM-15 and MGM-16, and there is another one which I haven't seen on the market yet, known as KUR 101, and I don't expect that to be sold, but and the reason why I say that is that most of these mom and pop operations don't have the ability to attach a deuterium atom to mitragynine, which is what KUR 101 is. It's deuterated mitragynine. Now, deuterated mitragynine is supposed to be a full agonist at the mu receptors and is currently in phase 2 clinical trials for severe pain management. But something about attaching that atom to the mitragynine molecule drastically increases its effectiveness and its binding affinity for the brain's mu receptors. How it does that, I don't know. That's way beyond the knowledge that I have. But there's a lot of pharmaceutical research into using a lot of these same drugs that are for sale online as they're hunting for the next blockbuster drug that lacks some of the side effects of traditional opioids. They've gotten on the bandwagon of issuing a dizzying array of patents for every possible iteration, isomer, tautomer, enantiomer, and delivery device imaginable for all things 7.0. It would not surprise me if part of the push for banning 7.0 was not done honestly, but rather surreptitiously by the pharmaceutical industry that wants to profit off this. Both MGM-15 and MGM-16 have emerged as new designer drugs. They are both evolutions of 7-0, and there's some research in the past and some current research into using them to treat chronic and neuropathic pain. Depending upon what they are used to treat, within animal models, they have anywhere from 20 to 240 times the potency of morphine, and not only binding affinity, but in tests that measure the attenuation of the pain response, like the tail flick test. Both of them are full mu and delta receptor agonists, which can be problematic as delta agonism is known to somewhat regularly provide heavy potentiation of mu agonism. I can't comment on the pharmacology of these two too much, as mixed receptor agonism has a dizzying array of logical and paradoxical effects depending upon the specific drug ingested. Some delta agonists will actually stimulate respiratory function and block the respiratory depression of normal mu agonists, while others will potentiate it. Many delta agonists also cause seizures at high doses, so we could see an increase in ER visits due to that. There's a lot that goes into play in human biology, and I'm merely a passionate amateur within all this. Mm-hmm. And as such, and as a member of the public, I don't have the ability to peer over the paywalls for publicly funded research that it's locked behind. Sarcasm's fully intended there. But this is all cutting edge stuff that is on the frontier of pharmacology that can be hard to access, and we may get new data in the years to come. There's more information I was able to find, but I'm whittling this presentation down some as we only have an hour and we're covering a lot of ground here. But this is all very similar to back how in the bath salt days, chemists were digging back through the literature on old drugs, and we're adding the methylene deoxy ring on every obscure stimulant under the sun to create new products. It's a similar story to oxidizing heavy kratom alkaloid and then testing it for effect. Now we're on to legal horizons. There's any number of designer drugs that we will continue to see be sold, and new ones that will be coming on the market after any 7-0 ban that does come. There's way too large of an appetite for this stuff for it to just go away after a 7-0 ban. The laws are going to have to be so broadly written that anything at all related to kratom would be illegal to sell. I have my own opinions on legislating absolutely everything under the sun but alcohol and the outcomes that gives, but there should at the very least be a 21 and over restriction on 7-0. But right now, anyone over 18 or anyone who looks 18 can just walk into a vape shop and buy it. And as my experiment earlier showed, on the internet, you just need the ability to send money and you can get a hold of even more highly refined products for a far better price. There are several states that have a ban on kratom and its alkaloids, which includes 7-0, such as Alabama, Arkansas, Indiana, Rhode Island, Vermont, and Wisconsin. Some states have a 2% limit on synthetic OH content within the kratom products being sold, which is Arizona, Oklahoma, Texas, and Utah, and states that have outright banned 7-0 as a processed or enhanced product, which is Tennessee and Georgia. The picture on the right is one that I pulled from Reddit on someone stocking up on 7-0 in preparation for a ban in their state. And that is multiple hundreds, if not $1,000 worth of product. And we're going to have some notes on treatment now. I ran across a lot of social media reports from users who stated that standard doses of buprenorphine weren't touching their withdrawals, and a few from people who went on methadone, and they had much the same experience. The users of the 7-0 products that contain multiple alkaloids, the standard run-of-the-mill ones that you can buy at a vape shop, the withdrawals that they experience would make a certain amount of sense as they're detoxing from a complex pharmacological cocktail. From the ones who have sought medical treatment, they report that clonidine has been a godsend in addition to the standard first-line opioid withdrawal medications. Clonidine is sometimes used as an adjunct and sometimes regrettably as a solo treatment for opioid withdrawal, and it does have a fairly good success rate and suppression of symptoms. Ondansetron is another medication that was also reported to provide a lot of relief from the nausea and the intestinal discomfort. Within my past attempts at quitting, I had been prescribed both of these at times, and it has a long history of use for this purpose. So it should not pose too much of a challenge to any user seeking treatment for their withdrawals. Conversely, medical personnel should probably be made aware that the single entity methadone or buprenorphine might not handle everything that they're going through. Now, I'd like to comment on drug testing now. I have zero clue if 7.0 will show up on a regular kratom test, which prevents a potential problematic issue for treatment centers. It will be detectable via gas chromatography and mass spectroscopy if you specify for it, but on a standard kratom test, verifiable information is kind of hard to come by. And I've seen conflicting information for both that it will and will not show up on a standard test. The next slide is all of the resources or the references that I pulled from. All of these slides I can send to anyone who would like them. And now we have a little bit of time for questions or comments. Let me stop my sharing. Okay.
All right. Blake and I are in the same room, so we're doing a little dance with the mute, but I just had a couple of questions or comments on it. So it kind of reminded me a little bit of another substance that I think we've talked about, which is tianeptine. You may see it sold as like Zaza. I think that's just one brand name for it. But I remember because we did a presentation on it and it had kind of similar scary symptoms of, not only like severe kind of like opioid like effects on people, but it also, because of weird brain chemistry stuff, it also would do something with like SSRI like effects in the brain. Now, this is stuff again that you can buy in a vape shop that's affecting all these different parts of your brain at once. But similarly, ERs were really struggling because they had people showing up with addictions to these substances and were really unsure of like how to treat it. So the question I have is the best route for treatment like a heavy course of MAT, meaning like methadone or large doses of Suboxone? And then the second question is, will Narcan work on this? So if somebody is like seems to be in like an overdose state, can naloxone affect that?
The standard treatments of heavy doses of methadone or buprenorphine will be necessary, but as one of the last slides that I had shown was, you probably need some sort of adjunct to it. There's a lot of anecdotal discussion of people going on antidepressants as well because of how it downregulates so much of their neurochemistry and how they need help even getting back to a normal functional state. So buprenorphine or methadone, clonidine, and then some standard round of antidepressants probably. Narcan will work, but one of the fortunate things about 7.0 is that it's a mixed agonist and it does not produce respiratory depression the same way that normal opioids will. But Narcan will work on it.
Just a whole lot of stuff here, Blake. Thank you. It's just mind-blowing. Our need to use drugs to get high, and our need somehow as human beings to evade the law and the gray area of legality. I mean, it's just, you mentioned bath salts, you know, I remember thinking about spice, all those things in the past where they were able to alter certain little analogs or parts of the chemical makeup, you know, to slip through as legal or semi-legal stuff. It's so hard to keep track of all of these things that, you know, it's just one of my focuses or thoughts is just how can we create a society where people don't feel the need to do these things? Obviously, we got some smart people out there messing around with chemistry in their kitchen, man, you know, and they could be doing something, you know, other than like learning how to get higher or what have you. It's just wow, stay away. I don't know, man. I don't know what to say. I gotta lay down after this presentation and hold my head and just wonder about this world. But I thank you for this presentation.
Thank you, Ben. Yeah, I think it would take a societal shift in order for people to not feel like they have to self-medicate like that. And it's one of the reasons why I have my own thoughts on legislating everything, because people are going to do it no matter what until we have that shift. And um, there's no easy answer for any of it.
It's like whack-a-mole. It just keeps moving and you can't catch it. And when you think you caught it, something else has moved. And I guess that's the frustrating part about it. The legislation end, I mean, gosh, man, you know, we have to keep legislating more and more and more to stay up with that. But I guess so. Until we can have a world that we can feel free to live in as we are, and not feel the need to alter our consciousness in this way. Crazy, man.
Thanks, Ben. Any other questions or comments or anything about the presentation? As you said, we can make the slides available if anyone's interested in getting a copy. Just you can put it in the chat and make sure that get that to you. It'll also be up on our YouTube page too, if anybody wants to share the video around. All right.
I did
Going.
have a curiosity question, and I completely respect if we don't want to answer this question. But when you were saying that it was able to be found online, like through some hints on Reddit, was that just the regular internet, or was that through like the dark web? Like, how easily accessible was that?
That was straight on the surface web.
Wow.
Just
Okay.
a few simple searches and a little bit of self-education, and it's readily available.
Okay. Wow. Well, thank you for all that information. This has been
Mhm.
enlightening. So.
All right, y'all. Well, hey, Blake, thank you again. Great presentation. And thank you everybody for coming. Next month, we actually have our own Annette Villarreal who'll be presenting on motherhood and recovery, everything from the pregnancy era up to delivery and beyond. So this is, as I've said, an area of substance use and mental health. For me, it's a personal blind spot. I know next to nothing. So I'm glad I have somebody who has experience and some of that to present for us next month. So that'll be the third Thursday in July on Zoom. So we hope you can join us for that one. But yeah, everybody give Blake a round of applause, and we'll let everybody get out of here for the day. Thanks, y'all, and we'll see you at the next one.